To be a dominant edge rusher in the NFL, you have to win three ways: outside, inside, and through. If you can do all three, you have a chance at becoming one of the top edge rushers in the NFL. Now, I don't want to be hyperbolic and say that Darrell Taylor, a second-year player out of Tennessee, has those traits, but what I will say is what I saw on Sunday against the Colts was highly encouraging. Taylor showed speed, Taylor showed power, and Taylor showed a very good understanding of leverage in order to create pressure on the quarterback. Before we begin this video, if you can do me a favor and like and subscribe to this channel, I would greatly appreciate it. So anyways, Darrell Taylor made his official debut against the Colts on Sunday. After getting drafted back in 2020, he was placed on the non-football injury list and missed his entire rookie season. On Sunday, he came on the field for the first time. Outside of his snaps on special teams, Taylor played 26 snaps on defense. 13 were against the run, while 12 were where he rushed the passer, and finally the last snap was where he was in coverage. Now, I'm not going to talk about the coverage snap in detail because he was in a hook curl zone and wasn't responsible for any opposing receivers. So really, there's nothing to be gained by breaking that down. With that being said though, let's start this video by talking about his pass rush. To start this game, Taylor used a dip and rip move around the edge. Lining up in a three-point stance in a wide 9 alignment, he started his rush with a stutter step in order to bait the right tackle. Unfortunately, Braden Smith was ready for this move. Instead of Taylor swiping down Smith's outside hand to set up the dip, the opposite occurred here. Smith landed an excellent strike on Taylor's inside arm. This counter, which was perfectly placed by Smith, it completely off-balanced Taylor. This is why Smith was able to get both hands on Taylor and ride him outside the pocket. This first rush definitely went to Smith. Before we move on from this play, we need to focus on his approach, how his footwork can be used to set up plays later on. So after the snap, watch his third and fourth steps closely. His third step inches closer to the offensive tackle, while the fourth is to distance himself to set up the swipe. While it didn't work on this one, I want you to keep the same footwork in the back of your mind for later on this video. Now, before we move on to the next play, I want to give a huge shout out to DraftKings for sponsoring this week's video. DraftKings is the leader in daily fantasy sports. They put you at the center of the action with a shot at millions of dollars in prizes. Now, if you've never played daily fantasy football before, it's very similar to how you play fantasy in your other leagues. You draft your 9 players with a salary cap of $50,000, but your goal remains the same. You want to rack up as many fantasy points as possible. For example, this week, I have 2 players that I'm going to target heavily in every single one of my lineups. First, you have Keenan Allen. He's been good for a long time, and looking at the Cowboys defense that he's facing, he offers a lot of value for your money. His dollar cost per point average is especially good this week. The second player I'm going to target is Elijah Mitchell. Yes, I know taking a Kyle Shanahan running back is always risky. However, at $5,000 for this player, you need to take chances like this one. Spend less money here with a lot of 49er upside and save yourself some cap space for a star player that is more consistent elsewhere. Regardless of who you pick, new users of DraftKings can use promo code SAMGOLD during signup and get a shot at millions of dollars in prizes with their first deposit. This is a great deal exclusive to this channel, so make sure you check it out. So after that first play, I honestly thought it was going to be a rough game for Taylor, but that couldn't have been further from the truth. This game turned into a one-sided domination by Taylor. What's crazy is that when you look at offensive tackles across the NFL, Braden Smith is actually well respected for being a good pass blocker. According to ProFootballFocus and looking at tackles for more than 500 snaps during the 2020 season, Smith ranked 17th out of 63 blockers. That's not average, that's actually really good. This is a testament to how good this game for Taylor really was. In his first 12 attempts, Taylor finished this game with a sack, a hit, and a hurry. This means he created pressure on 25% of his rushes. The crazy thing is that it could have been worse. If Carson Wentz didn't throw the ball so early on a designed throw, it's very likely that Taylor would have had another pressure and potentially a second sack. Let's check out his spin move here. Once again, Taylor was lining up in a 3-point stance in a wide 9 alignment. After the snap, Taylor burst off the line of scrimmage, attacking the outside of Smith. The moment his second foot hit the ground, Taylor dipped his body down and spun back inside towards the quarterback. I want you to pay close attention to how he made his frame smaller in order to avoid any contact from the right tackle. By the time he finished the spin, he was already inside the B gap. If this ball wasn't thrown in 1.6 seconds, this would have been a sack. This play is definitely impressive, and it shows Taylor's ability to win back inside. Now, before we move on from this play, the key takeaway is that Taylor uses his speed and the threat of his speed in order to set up his moves. There's a good reason why a lot of his rushes early in this game are purposely widened to the outside. He wants the right tackle to step closer and closer towards the sideline and get comfortable flipping his hips in that direction. This is all to set up his spin or his bull rush back inside. Both those moves are quicker, more dynamic, and they have the potential of creating some monster plays. This is exactly what happened on his very next snap. This is how Taylor collected his first sack. Once again, in that same alignment and the same 3-point stance, Taylor timed the snap well and accelerated into the backfield. He took 3 steps with his inside foot getting closer to the right tackle before using his 4th step in order to create distance. This should remind you exactly the same approach that he used on the dip and rip move that I showed earlier. Watch closely what happened next. Instead of swiping down on Smith's inside arm, Taylor angled his body back inside and towards the quarterback. He placed both of his hands on Smith's chest, he got low, and then he blew him backwards with his strength. He literally forklifts him exactly as you do in practice on those dummies. You can see that his weight was over his toes and he was lunging towards his target. On this play, Taylor did a fantastic job of setting this up. He then finished this rush by disengaging and he took Carson Wentz down for a sack. To me, this is an absolutely insane level of power that he can generate using his speed. Speed to power and using that to bull rush is one of Taylor's best traits. In my opinion, this is one of his best moves, and I think he should try to use it more frequently as a bigger part of his game plan. So, after this earthquaking sack, the rest of this game went by pretty quickly. As I said before, Taylor was only on the field for a total of 12 snaps where he was rushing the passer. 2 snaps after this one, the Colts decided to throw a double team in his direction in order to slow him down. This was probably a good idea, as one of Taylor's last plays on this game, which once again was a one-on-one against Smith, he clearly won on this one. He used that dip and rip move that I showed earlier in this breakdown, and he was able to hit the quarterback and force him to throw out of bounds. Now, obviously going through this breakdown, in the 12 pass rush attempts that he had in this game, not every single one of them was going to be pretty. I think Taylor needs to get better with his angles to be more consistent. Anytime there was play action or a quick step to the outside, it definitely slowed his process down. The other thing I noticed was that his hands and feet weren't always in sync. When these fell out of line, and this is something I noted in my video on him last summer during my scouting report, it had a negative impact on his pass rush. I do think, however, that with more experience, Taylor will get even better. He's already shown the high-level traits that you want to see. Moving on from his pass rush, I want to quickly talk about his roll and run defense. Mainly speaking, Taylor played edge-contained duties on the outside. He was responsible for shutting down zone read options, and his goal is to make sure the running back didn't break to the backside. Save for 1 or 2 plays here and there, he mostly did a good job. Let's quickly talk about one of my favorite plays from this game. This happened in the red zone. On this one, the Colts are running outside zone to the strong side. Taylor's goal as the wide 9 is to control the tight end and use his strength to force the running back to cut back inside. The hope here is that the other defensive lineman can help clean up the ball carrier. However, Taylor went above and beyond on this one. He blew the tight end backwards with the same power and force that we showed earlier, then he was able to disengage and tackle the running back for a minimal gain. So, to wrap up this video, the main takeaway I had with Taylor was that he showed the dominant traits of a top-tier edge rusher. He clearly has the speed, he clearly has the power, and what impressed me the most was his understanding of how to create leverage. For his first game in the NFL, I was very impressed by what I saw. I think with more experience and more training to keep his hands and feet in sync, Taylor can turn into a dominant player. It could be possible that the Seahawks have finally found their long-awaited Leo after all. Well, that's all I have for you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel below. You can also support me directly through Patreon, and do me a favor and let me know what you want to see in the future. Thanks again for watching, and you can also find me on Twitter at Samuel R. Gold.